Thanks to everybody who's watching, and the graduate panelists, thank you for coming. My name's Dan Sweeney. I'm a senior studying stats at the University of Michigan. Um, and if you guys just want to quickly introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
Sure, I may as well go first since I'm listed first on the slide. My name is Julian Wolfson. I'm an assistant professor in the Division of Biostatistics here at the University of Minnesota. I've been here for about 7 years, and I'm involved in recruiting, and I also sit on our admissions committee. So I've been involved in lots of aspects of graduate school admissions and recruiting, and I look forward to the session today.
Okay, I'm next on the list. So I am Bruce Craig. I'm a professor in the Department of Statistics and also the director of our statistical consulting service that we have here at the university. I've been at Purdue ever since I graduated, so I've been here I think 21 years now. Have not been on an admissions committee, but I've been on a variety of other committees, both undergraduate and graduate.
All right, I'm Heather. I'm a second-year PhD student at MIT. I'm studying computer science, specifically in like computational neuroscience. I did an undergrad in math and statistics. So, yeah.
Awesome. Great to meet all of you guys. For those watching in the audience, feel free to submit questions throughout the conversation. I guess I'll start off with what skills or courses are most useful as one prepares for grad school in statistics, biostatistics, data science, or computer science? I guess at the undergrad level.
Sure. Well, requirements differ between different departments, so it's always a good policy to look on the websites of the programs that you're considering applying to figure out what prerequisites they have. I think I speak for most biostatistics departments that the actual firm prerequisites are pretty minimal, consisting of up to multivariable calculus and linear algebra, and some programs will require a course in mathematical statistics. Some will require one course in real analysis. I know the statistics departments typically are looking for a little bit more mathematical preparation than that as a background. Generally speaking, I usually suggest to undergraduate students that they're better off taking more math as opposed to, say, more statistics as undergraduate students. And the reason I suggest that is, first of all, I think mathematical reasoning is the thing that is really going to help you out in the more advanced domains of statistics. It's the ability to put together a proof. It's those kind of types of thinking that you need to learn early on, and I think it's very difficult to go back and learn those things when you're already in grad school and have a lot of other commitments. So I recommend to people getting as much abstract theoretical thinking done as early as possible, and then you can always pick up the applied side as you go through. That's my general recommendation to students.
Yeah, I would second that. I don't think things have changed that much, even though statistics and computing and all that's involved has changed a lot. As far as programs go, still a very strong mathematical background. And maybe perhaps the only thing I'd add is some computing programming now is more important than it was in the past. But it's still, I think, mostly you do strong calculus, linear algebra, real analysis, and do well on GREs. Those are the kinds of things that best prepare you to get into the programs.
Yeah, I would echo that, I guess. Even in grad school, for computer science courses, the students who have a stronger background in math, things tend to just click a little bit easier because you have that foundation. Otherwise, I know a lot of students will take those math classes along with their other requirements, and that's just a lot to learn at once.
Great, thank you. And sort of staying on the topic of undergrad studies, how important do you guys think it is for undergrad students to participate in research before graduate school?
You know, research is a great experience to have. I think the challenge is that we recognize that not every undergraduate student has equal access to opportunities for research. You know, if you're at a small liberal arts college, there just may not be a lot of people doing the kinds of research in statistics or biostatistics that that you'd have maybe at a bigger institution. So I think it's very useful to get exposure to that kind of thinking. But generally, among the students that apply to our program and that we see applying across the field, you know, research experience is becoming more common, but still, sort of meaningful research experience to the type of research that you'll actually be doing as a graduate student is still relatively rare among applicants that we see. You know, we're really trying to evaluate research potential, and that's spoken to by, you know, your academic preparation. It's spoken to by the letters of recommendation you get that speak to whether you're able to work independently, whether you're able to write well. You know, and I think those are stronger predictors of your eventual success than whether you happen to have had the opportunity to work on a project for a few months. You know, real meaningful research experience has to last more than 2 or 3 months, right? It's years. It's 2 or 3 years working on a project. And so it's obviously nice to be exposed, and I think that research experience is very valuable for trying to understand whether it's a good match for you, whether a particular area is a good match for you, and maybe trying to tighten up your research interest a little bit. But I tend to sort of see it as not as a luxury. It's not totally essential, and I think people can be very successful in graduate school even without substantial research experience as undergraduates.
Yeah, if you had to choose between research experience and, say, taking real analysis or something like that, real analysis is going to be the thing that's going to be more important for those evaluating you for graduate potential. I will say, though, that these kinds of research experiences are a wonderful way to work on the soft skills of statistics, which aren't necessarily things even in graduate school we do a great job of teaching. And so being able to communicate, read papers, and all those things really will help you in the long run as you get into research. But it's not necessarily a requirement to get into graduate school.
So I think research in undergrad can be really helpful to expose you to like what grad school might be like, or if grad school wasn't on your radar, then it will put it on your radar, but if you're watching this, then it's already on your radar. So yeah, I suppose like if you can do it during the summer, it's helpful, but during the school year, I would just say take classes, I guess, or at least I don't think that would hurt you at all.
I mean, I'll also say that because so many more people, because there are many more of these opportunities available, it's actually becoming less of a differentiating factor among students now, because so many students now do things like in biostatistics, they do the Summer Institute in Biostatistics, or they've been involved in an RU. It's become less of a thing. It's kind of like volunteering in a hospital for medical students, right? Everybody does it because it's a thing you do. And so it's very difficult to really distinguish yourself by doing something like that. I think the way you distinguish yourself is by academic performance and really impressing the people who are going to write letters for you. And actually another thing that I'll mention, in addition to what Bruce was saying about teaching you the soft skills, there is another advantage of doing research experiences, is it does broaden the pool of people who could potentially write letters of recommendation for you. So if you did an RU with somebody and they were really impressed with what you did, and they can then write you a strong letter, that could help as well.
Great, thank you. So would you guys, I think all three of you, and mostly Julian, touched a little bit on letters of recommendation. How did you guys go about getting your letters of recommendation? What did you look for, and sort of the types of classes that you got letters of recommendation for? primarily?
Well, why don't we start with Heather, because she's the one who's done that most recently. Sure.
Yeah, so for me, I wasn't sure exactly which graduate program I wanted to apply for. So for the math programs, I would choose professors that taught me in math. And but I think someone told me, I'm not sure if it was Julian that told me this, but I had someone do it from a research experience or some sort of work experience, whether an internship or just someone who knows me outside of academia, and then someone who taught me one of the upper level like stats classes, and if I was applying to a school where I had worked with someone who was somehow connected to that school, then I would kind of ask them to write a letter of rec for a school, and yeah, if that makes sense.
I'm happy to go next. I honestly don't remember who I asked. It was so long ago. I kind of was in a math program at Washington University and wasn't even aware of statistics as a graduate degree until my mother senior year said, so what are you going to do? And she had mentioned graduate programs. So I ended up visiting Wisconsin, which is where I'm from, and basically just applied to Big Ten universities because I wanted to stay in the Big Ten. I'm pretty sure I asked my advisor because I had a lot of interactions with him throughout the years, but to be honest, I can't remember who the others were that I asked. I think it's good to make sure that you get someone who can evaluate your mathematical strengths, and if you do a project or something like that, to get someone involved there. But other than that, I don't really have much that I can give you in way of experience or remembrance of experience.
Yeah, I'm similarly, I'm pretty far away from having to solicit letters of recommendation for graduate school, but I would say, my general advice to people is get the people who know you best. Obviously, you want to have faculty, but I think if you're going to get a much stronger letter from somebody who is a professor of yours in economics that you did a research project with, if they're going to write a lot more nice things about your ability to do research or your quantitative abilities than somebody you just took a math class from and you got an A, go with the person who's going to write the more detailed, meaningful letter. So if you do have a choice, I think you want to go with the people who know you the best and who are going to say the most nice things about you. Now, of course, you don't know in advance if they're all going to say nice things about you, but I really think that letters that have more detail about the individual are much more likely to grab an admissions committee member's attention than something which just says so-and-so got an A in my class. And there's nothing wrong. Sometimes sometimes one of your letters is just going to say so-and-so got an A in my class and they were, the top 3 out of 50 students, and that's good. But that doesn't provide a lot of information beyond what we can already get from looking at your transcript. So you want to get information from a letter that you can't get from another source. And so you want people who can say things beyond the stuff that we can already see. So that's what I generally suggest for students when they're trying to find letters. And one of the other things students often wonder is, should I try to find somebody famous? Now, the reality is, 99% of the letters that we get come from people that we don't know who they are. Occasionally we get letters from people who say, oh yeah, I know who that person is. But realistically, as long as somebody's faculty, it doesn't really matter what their name is. What matters is what they say about the individual. So don't go hunting around for some quote unquote famous person who you may have met once in the hallway, or maybe maybe you took their class but they don't know who you are. The letter from that person is not going to be as meaningful as a personalized letter from somebody you've been working with or who knows you well.
Great, thank you guys. And so we have a question from the audience here. What kind of skills or experiences does graduate school help you gain that can be applied in the industry?
Bruce, do you want to lead off? Because
I
you've
can-
been doing a
yeah,
lot of
sure.
consulting stuff. So
Yeah. So as I had mentioned at the beginning of the talk or the call, I had said that I'm the director of the consulting service that we have here. There are a variety of departments, biostat areas that have these kinds of centers, which basically allow you to get some kind of experience with research projects going around the university. Ours is geared entirely towards faculty and students that are associated with the university. But it's a wonderful way of starting to develop the kinds of communication skills and other things that you will need when you go off and take a job or get into academia. And basically the way ours works is we have an initial meeting where myself or a faculty member, the other faculty member are involved, and then it is the graduate student working on their own with the client to get the project done. And so you work on the various time management skills, communication skills, all the kinds of things that any kind of position that you have will entail. Often also you're getting involved into a problem which requires a kind of analysis you've never done before. And so you work on your research skills of going and reading and learning kind of on your own how to do various projects. So we recommend all our students, whether you're a master's student or a PhD, to get involved in our consulting service at some point to gain those kinds of experiences. And it's often the experience that our students say was the most valuable when they've gone off and been in the workforce.
yeah, and we offer, we have a consulting center as well here at the University of Minnesota in the Division of Biostatistics. We have a consulting course where students do engage in the same kind of experiential learning that Bruce was referring to. I think those experiences are tremendously valuable, and they really mimic what people are going to be doing in the real world. Especially people who are coming from biostat departments and going to work in industry, for example, in drug companies. So I think that kind of experience is very important. Some students choose to do internships over the summer, so that's kind of part of the graduate school experience for them. They go off and they go work. In our case, they go to Merck, or they go to Lilly, or a pharmaceutical company or a health insurance company, and they work over the summer doing real data analysis. And so I think those are the kinds of experiences that are going to help. But I don't think we should. We also shouldn't neglect the core material in the courses, because a lot of what you need to be successful in industry is the same domain knowledge that you would need to be successful in academia, right? You need to understand the performance of various models and when they're appropriate and when they're not. And in industry, just as in academia, you want people who have learned those kind of techniques that they have a deep level of comprehension of them. So I think that's also another piece of it.
And just adding on to that, something I found about grad school is that you can sort of pick and choose some of the projects that you want to work on. So if there is a consulting center at your university, then that could be a really good way for you to get involved and pair up with industry sponsors.
All right, thank you guys. Got another question from the audience, and this one is sort of trying to delve at the differences between a master's and a PhD program. So what factors does a student need to consider when deciding between a master's versus a PhD in biostats, stats, computer science?
Is this in terms of applying, or if once you're there, getting a master's versus getting a PhD?
I think sort of the difference between the two, what you get out of the various experiences, in your opinion, sort of maybe the pros and cons of doing one or the other.
Okay. I can start here as well. I think it again varies depending on departments and things. We have a variety of master's programs Typically, they are 2 years in length and involve a variety of coursework. Sometimes the courses aren't at the same mathematical rigor as the PhD courses that would be comparable to that. But you're usually, when you're getting a master's, you're then looking at going off and working somewhere, industry, pharmaceuticals, wherever. So we have like a master's in computational finance, which emphasizes obviously the finance side, an applied master's, which would be more dealing with consulting, and a couple others. There's the typical one is mathematical science master's, but those are ones that people usually get when they're going towards a PhD. PhD is a longer program and will take 3 to 6 years roughly. I usually think most students should plan on like 5. And this is where you will be working on a thesis. Sometimes the master's has a thesis involved with it, but a PhD thesis is where you're doing your own individual research into developing or working on some new methodology or the theory behind methodology, things like that. It's a longer program, not necessarily more coursework than what is required for a master's, but you're developing research skills and potential where you are thinking usually more in terms of academia. That said, I think about half of our PhD students will go off into industry, and there you will start out at a more leadership role than you would as a master's student.
Yeah, and I would just sort of continue from that point and say that really for us, and at least in biostatistics, the choice between master's and PhD comes down to kind of where you see yourself down the road. You know, if you think that you'd rather be part of a team of scientists, of collaborators, and you'd like to play a role in sort of doing data analysis and contributing to science in that perspective, but not necessarily be in a leadership role of deciding on what analyses are being done, deciding how to make all, you know, how to carry out these studies, a master's makes a lot of sense, and it's a very marketable degree because there's a tremendous demand for people with that skill level, and so, you know, for a relatively small investment of time, you can really kind of maximize your earnings potential and your ability to find sort of an interesting job. You know, PhD students, obviously the door is more open to the academic path, but even students who go into industry are, as Bruce mentioned, in more leadership roles. So you're leading a team, you're deciding on the kind of analyses that are being done, you're going to be managing people under you, and that's more of the path that people are looking at if they're getting a PhD. Some students start with a master's degree and decide while they're doing a master's degree that they'd like to continue on to the PhD, and most programs do allow the flexibility for students who want to continue on, at the very least, to apply to the PhD program while they are master's students. Some programs have an even more facilitated process where you just sort of apply internally and can get kind of bumped up into the PhD program if everybody thinks that you're doing well. So the decision isn't, you know, the be-all and end-all. Most programs also have the flexibility that for students who are in the PhD program and decide that it's not really for them, typically because the first-year coursework is mostly shared between master's and PhD students, or is often shared, students can decide they'd rather graduate with a master's degree after 2 years, and usually that's not too big of a problem. So, you know, it's an important decision to make about which path you want to take, but it's not like it's a final decision that can never be reversed.
Yeah, PhD, it definitely seems you're there for a while, so maybe masters, like the first both years you're doing a lot of coursework. I'm not sure how it is across schools, but after the second year at my school, there is no more coursework required, so you just are working on your thesis and really digging into whatever research topic is of interest to you. But also a lot of people will choose that they would rather just leave with a master's, partially through their PhD program, and that's fine, I guess. I mean, it's not uncommon, so.
I just want to add one thing. So I was one of those students who I went to Madison, Wisconsin, thinking just masters and then go off into industry, and the faculty convinced me to kind of go on. I was enjoying graduate school and everything, and so I switched over. At the time that I applied, except for Michigan, which wouldn't give me support if I was going to go for a master's, all the other Big Ten schools had money both for master's students and PhD students. That is not necessarily the case anymore. And so if you're kind of thinking, do I want to do a master's or a PhD, I suggest that you apply as a PhD student for the opportunities of getting funding, either as a TA or as a research assistant or something like that.
Yeah, and almost all programs, and I don't know whether Purdue falls into this, but most of the programs that I've seen, if you apply to the PhD program and are not admitted, you will often be automatically considered for admission to the master's if you do not already have a master's degree. So it's kind of a no penalty way of going. You apply to the PhD. If you don't get into the PhD, maybe you'll get a master's admission offer, though that admission offer may not come with funding.
Yeah.
Great, thank you guys. So I think we have time for one or two more questions. So do you recommend working in the field for a few years before attending grad school, or do you recommend going and getting that expert understanding of the field before you enter the workforce?
So I kind of considered this when I was going to get my master's and then go off, and what my father told me is, once you go off and you start making some money, it's hard to then give up that kind of lifestyle to go back and be a graduate student. Now, with that said, I look at how graduate students' life is now, and it's not so bad, but it is less than what you'd get if you're in the workforce. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind is doing that switch back, and you're also more removed from the coursework that you've taken before, and for some that's intimidating, and or it just takes a while to catch up. And so, I mean, if you're really having a hard time deciding, do I want to go off and work, or do I want to go on for a PhD, and you want to experience the work, I would suggest while you're in grad school, if you have the opportunity, to look into the internships, because those are really a great summer experience to get some idea of what work would be like.
Yeah.
That said, I just want to say I do have friends who have gone off and decided I'm going to wait, and then they never went back, and they're fine with it. And then I have other ones who 15 years later went back and got their PhD because it's something they really wanted to do. So you can do it. It's just, I think, hard to go back once you start having a certain lifestyle and income stream.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we see the occasional person who works as an actuary for a year and then just says, gosh, this just isn't for me. I want to come and get a PhD. But I would say for some perspective, roughly 80 to 90% of our incoming students are coming straight out of an undergraduate or a master's program. So continuing that on, I think there's a lot to be said for kind of staying in student mode and kind of just re-upping and saying, well, I was an undergrad, but now starting September, I'm now a grad student back to taking classes. I think it is an adjustment, and the adjustment is just that much harder if you've been away. But there are people who go off, and often students who come back are extremely motivated because they know what it's like out, on the job market. They know the types of skills that they need to learn, and they want to know more about certain areas that they've encountered in their work. So there certainly is a benefit to having seen that kind of stuff. But there's also an adjustment, so I'd say pluses and minuses.
Yeah, I have quite a few friends who said that they would go apply for grad school after going into industry undergrad, and you know, when they compare their lifestyle that they have currently to a grad student's lifestyle, uh, they're not applying anytime soon, and I mean, but they also really like their job, so it's. And then that being said, the people who, yeah, like Julian was saying, the people who have come from industry and are now in grad school, they seem to just know exactly what they want to do, and it seems like they almost get, it seems like they can get a lot more out of it if when they are that motivated to come back, because they're giving up a lot of money to be in student mode again.
I think there used to be a lot of companies that had ceilings where if you didn't have this certain degree, you couldn't get past this certain level. And a lot of them are now moving more to, you know, if you have this degree, it takes this long, but if you have this much experience, then you can also be considered for these positions. And so it's not as important to have these degrees in certain areas. It just helps speed it up sometimes.
Okay, thank you guys. So we are out of time.